The rain had started before sunset and never seemed to decide whether it wanted to fall harder or simply linger. It drifted through the yellow glow of the neon open sign in slow silver lines, turning the empty highway into a ribbon of glass stretching endlessly into the darkness. Inside the last open diner, the coffee machine hissed softly while the old jukebox sat silent, waiting for someone to remember a song it hadn't played in decades. The waitress wiped the same spotless counter for the third time that hour, more out of habit than necessity, while the old man remained in booth 7 with his newspaper folded beside a mug that somehow never emptied. There were only 3 customers in the building when the headlights appeared through the rain. They weren't moving quickly. They crawled into the parking lot as though every mile had become heavier than the last, before stopping beneath the flickering sign. A young man stepped out wearing a soaked brown jacket, no umbrella, no luggage in his hands, only exhaustion written across his face. Yet sitting alone in the back seat of the old sedan was a single leather suitcase. It looked expensive once. Now it was worn smooth by years of travel, its brass corners scratched white with age. He looked at it for several long seconds before locking the car and walking inside without taking it. He ordered coffee, but barely touched it. Instead, he kept looking through the window toward the car, as if expecting someone else to climb out and collect the suitcase for him. The waitress eventually asked whether he wanted something to eat, and after a pause he ordered apple pie simply because he couldn't remember the last time anyone had asked him what he wanted. When she brought the plate, he thanked her with a smile that disappeared before it fully reached his eyes. The old man in booth 7 watched quietly. People who arrived at the last open diner often carried things they couldn't leave behind. Most of the time, they weren't visible. Sometimes, though, they took the shape of old photographs, wedding rings, faded uniforms, unopened letters, or forgotten suitcases waiting in the rain. Nearly an hour passed before the old man finally stood and walked toward him. He asked only one question. "How long have you been driving?" The young man stared into his coffee. "About 6 years." The old man smiled gently. "That's a long drive." "It wasn't supposed to be." The words hung between them until the rain outside grew loud enough to fill the silence. Finally, the young man began to speak. 6 years earlier, his father had died without warning. A heart attack during an ordinary Tuesday morning. No final conversation, no goodbye. Just a phone call that divided life into before and after. Cleaning the family home became his responsibility because there was no one else left to do it. Every room carried memories that seemed to become heavier the longer he stayed. In the attic, he found the leather suitcase hidden beneath dusty blankets. Inside were dozens of letters tied together with blue ribbon, old photographs, military papers, train tickets from countries his father had never mentioned visiting, and one small black notebook whose pages had been carefully numbered by hand. He expected secrets. He found silence. The letters were all addressed to his father, but never opened. Some had foreign stamps dating back 30 years. Others had no stamps at all, only names written in handwriting he didn't recognize. The notebook contained dates and locations, but no explanations. Every few pages there was only a single sentence. Not yet. Nothing more. He assumed there had to be a reason his father hid everything. So instead of throwing the suitcase away, he placed it into his own car. He told himself he'd read it later. Later became 6 years. Every city he moved to. Every apartment. Every relationship. Every new beginning. The suitcase came with him. Always in the trunk. Never opened again. Whenever life became difficult, he promised himself he would finally face whatever was inside. Whenever life became easier, He convinced himself there was no reason to disturb the past. Eventually, he realized he wasn't carrying the suitcase because of his father anymore. He was carrying it because he had forgotten how to live without it. The old man listened without interruption. Outside, lightning briefly illuminated the parking lot. The suitcase remained visible through the rain, sitting exactly where it had been left. "Have you opened it since?" the old man asked. "No." "Why?" "I'm afraid there won't be any answers. And if there are, I'm even more afraid of that." The waitress quietly refilled both coffees before returning behind the counter. Neither man noticed. After another long silence, the old man stood. "Bring it inside." The young man hesitated. "I don't think I can. You've carried it 6 years." "I know. So carrying it another 30 seconds won't hurt." For the first time that night, the young man laughed. A tired laugh, the kind that sounds surprised to discover it still exists. He walked into the rain and returned moments later with the heavy leather suitcase resting against his leg. Water dripped from the cracked handle onto the diner floor. Every customer looked toward it, without knowing why. The old man unclipped the brass locks, but didn't open the lid. Instead, he slid the suitcase across the table. "You!" The young man's hands trembled. He lifted the lid. Inside lay exactly what he remembered. Letters, photographs, the notebook. Nothing had changed, yet somehow everything had. One photograph slipped loose onto the table. It showed his father standing beside an old roadside diner beneath a glowing neon sign. The picture was faded, almost colorless, but the sign could still be read. "The last open diner." The young man frowned. "This can't be right." He turned the photograph over. No date, no writing, nothing. "I've never seen this." The waitress leaned over for only a second before quietly stepping back. "I don't remember anyone taking that picture," she whispered. The old man didn't answer. Instead, he reached toward the notebook. "May I?" The young man nodded. The old man opened it carefully. Every page was still covered with dates and the words, "Not yet," until the final page. There, written in ink that looked newer than every other entry, were 7 words. "When you're ready, leave the suitcase behind." The young man stared. "I swear, I know," the old man replied. "That wasn't there." He looked again. The ink was still drying. A tiny drop slowly slid downward across the page before stopping exactly beneath the final word. Nobody in the diner had been holding a pen. No one spoke for several minutes. Eventually, the young man closed the notebook, removed the bundle of unopened letters, and placed them into his backpack. The photographs followed, then the papers. When everything else had been packed away, only the empty leather suitcase remained. He stood, walked toward the door, paused, then set the suitcase beside the entrance before stepping into the rain. His car disappeared down the highway without ever slowing. The waitress locked the door a few minutes later and noticed the suitcase still sitting where he'd left it. "Should we keep it?" she asked. The old man looked toward booth 7 before answering. "It already belongs here." She carried it into the storage room behind the kitchen. There were dozens of old shelves she had worked around for years without ever paying much attention. She placed the empty suitcase onto the highest shelf. Only then did she notice it wasn't alone. Sitting beside it were 5 other leather suitcases, different colors, different sizes. Each carried a small handwritten tag. No names, only dates. The oldest tag read 1948, and every suitcase was empty.